everyone, welcome back to Alkaline Hydroxide 784, and today in the chemistry series we are doing the last episode. So this episode will be about the exam related kind of stuff, like advice and stuff. I probably would have already told a lot of this stuff in maybe the day before the paper videos or some other video, but I'm just gonna do this one because I think this will be a bit more comprehensive. So as we all know, there's already a practical series. In fact, that was the very first series on this channel. And I think it would be better for you to watch that for the practical advice, precisely because I did it as the very first series and I would have had more, sensible advice at that point of time. Now it's like almost a year later. Sorry, not almost a year, it's like wait, it's more than a year later. Oh my gosh. Never mind. Okay, so yeah, I'll just give you what I can tell based on what I remember about the paper and based on my common sense as well. Okay, so first we'll look at the scheme of assessment, which is in the syllabus. Just quickly look through it and see what's there. I mean, I'm pretty sure no one really cares about the scheme of assessment information written here because they already know what the papers are about, but just look at it. So as per the scheme of assessment, we have 4 different papers in chemistry. The multiple choice, which is paper 1. Paper 2, which is called structured questions. Paper 3, which is called free response questions. And paper 4, which is practical. So paper 1 is basically just 30 multiple choice questions. So each question you get 2 minutes. So in total you have 1 hour. And paper 2 will have a bunch of like normal structured questions, basically a question with some stuff written there, then you had to write an answer in a bunch of lines, that kind of question. And it includes some database questions as well, and that will be about 20 marks out of the 75 marks in paper 2. So the rest of the marks will be to just other kinds of structured questions. So for paper 3, it is called free response questions because you don't have to be constrained to the lines in the paper, and instead you get to write on some foolscap paper as long as you want to. So in paper 3 there are 2 sections where the first one is compulsory, and each of the questions are like each question is 15 to 25 marks. There's like 3 to 4 questions. And then section B, which is 20 marks, which consists of 2 different questions, and both of the questions have the same amount of marks and are pretty similar in structure and stuff, but you only have to choose one of them, which is interesting. Yeah. So yeah, that's paper 3. And the last one is paper 4, which is practical. And even though it is called paper 4, it happens before all of the other papers. And in fact, paper 1 happens at the end. So I don't know what the logic is, but okay, never mind. So paper 4 is practical, and it has planning, all the experiment doing, all that stuff, which I'm pretty sure you probably may not have gotten enough time to experience because of the current situation, but if you have, then good for you. Yeah. Okay, so in terms of today's episode, we will not be looking at paper 4 because first of all, I don't think I can give any extra details or extra information that I've already given in the practical series. So if you want to, look at practical, think of what advice there is for practical, just watch that series instead. It is much more comprehensive, and it's also done at a earlier time, so the advice will actually make more sense than compared to right now, which, because let's face it, I kind of forget things as after a year or two. And the fact that I can even remember all these things to begin with is already a big thing. Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, so let's look at the other 3 papers, which are the theory papers. So in the theory papers, of course, you don't need to do any experiments and stuff, but you definitely need to remember all of your theory. And what I will be talking about today is 1, how to study for the papers. 2, what you need to prepare for sure, like what stuff you need to bring. And 3, the strategies during the actual paper. Okay, so the first step is studying for all of these papers. So for chemistry, when you study, you know there's the stuff that you kind of memorize your way through, like the organic chem stuff and everything, you memorize it. And there's also things that you can't really memorize per se, but have to know how to go about doing it. Like if it's a calculation, and you do the necessary calculation for that question. And yeah, so for that you can, like, if you have trouble in one of those things, then you should focus on that thing more. Like for example, if you have trouble memorizing, then you should try to find ways to make it easier for you. Sometimes it's easier to memorize something when you understand it, and some people just cannot remember the thing because they do not understand it to begin with. So what I always tell anyone is, if let's say they have some trouble with a particular topic, they must make sure that they actually understand what they're studying first, because if you don't understand it, it's going to be quite hard to memorize it without a lot of effort in the sense. So generally what I like to do in the sense is, for all of the topics, make sure that you understand the concepts in the topic, and if you read through your notes, you know what's going on. Or if you are looking at a certain process, like the explanation, you understand the explanation, not just remember it but understand it. Because if you understand it, then even if you forget certain things, you can just recall it from your understanding, which is a lot easier than trying to memorize each and every single word for word in your brain. So yeah, so that's the first thing. And sometimes there are just some things that you cannot understand and you have to go and memorize them, like literally just memorize it word for word. And in that case, you can try to write them down somewhere. Like you write those particular things that you have a hard time remembering on a piece of paper, or on multiple pieces of paper if you need that. And then just look at it every time before the exam, because that definitely will help with the slight last minute boost. I mean, if last minute revision is not a good thing, but last minute, just a quick look through your notes that you've already, finished long ago, you already looked at long ago. It's just like one last time of looking through it. It helps you to reinforce whatever revision you did earlier. And it's also, sometimes if it's the kind of thing that you cannot remember for a very long time, at least you can remember for that 1 hour or 2 hours of time. Yeah, so about the notes, I do recommend having, that, like for example, if there's something that you have trouble remembering, that kind of notes. Or if you're going to actually write a summary for all of the chapters, then you can include it into that summary as well. Because actually the point of the summary here isn't to make your notes shorter, but more of to write the stuff that you want to actually write down in the sense. So when people write summaries, they sometimes just go about making it look very nice. They put a lot of colors, and then they put literally all of the stuff in the notes, point by point. Or at least they try to summarize it, but they don't really know how to go about doing it. Well, I don't think that's very efficient, because first of all, you probably spend like 2 hours just doing all the nice decorations. And we don't have a lot of time to actually study all of this. And I can't do that kind of stuff. So yeah. So what I would prefer is, of course, if you want to literally write all of the concepts in the thing, then go ahead. But like for me, what I like to write down is all the things that you generally would want to memorize. But of course, I would understand it, but it's like the kind of thing I write down, like explanations and stuff, like a certain order to it, or certain keywords that you sometimes forget. So that those things I write down. And then some of the organic chem stuff, which I sometimes forget again and again, I write it down so that I can keep looking at it again and again and hope to remember it. Yeah, so that kind of thing. And for some of the reactions and stuff, I can just condense it in a small corner and then just draw a whole bunch of arrows and then not understand what I wrote. Okay, actually I can still understand, but it is a bit hard to read. Yeah, so that's how my notes look like. So you have to decide how you want your notes to be, and make sure that you can actually read it yourself. Even if it's messy, if you can do it, then that's good enough for you. And it also should be something that you can easily flip through before the exam. So because people want to be doing last minute revision for sure, so this should be a convenient thing that you can look through on the day of the exam. Like maybe half an hour before the exam you can flip through it and just quickly put it in your locker and then go to the exam venue, that kind of a thing. So yeah, that is what the notes should be. Apart from notes and stuff, the reason why I'm going straight to notes is because at this point of time, like at the juncture before the A levels especially, you should have already been quite aware of all of the content and all the content knowledge and all the stuff lah. Like you would have already been taught everything, and technically you should understand at least a decent majority of that stuff. So if you are not in that stage, then oh well, please do get that stage first before you go around trying to write notes. Of course, if you're looking at this before maybe a different exam, like an exam that's not A levels, then you can think of it for the topics that you're tested in that exam instead. Like you can do up to those topics, and then you can continue adding on as you learn more and more topics. So just take note of that. So apart from notes, the other thing that you can do is practice questions. And for the questions, usually there are two sources. One is the stuff that your school asks you to print, or like other school papers and stuff like that. So it will be all the school kind of questions, either your school or other schools' questions. And the other source will be A-level past year papers. So the A-level past year papers are an interesting resource because they are pretty much like done in the A-level style already. So it would be wise to keep them for A-level itself instead of using them at the beginning, especially if you're the kind who doesn't like redoing the same questions twice. Yeah, like I know I don't really understand how some people can do the same question many times. Yeah, so I need to do different questions every time, or at least questions from different sources every time. So if you're that kind of person, then please keep the A-level questions for A-levels itself, like that maybe that 1 or 2 months before the A-levels, because there's actually enough time in that 1 or 2 months to actually finish all of the A-level past year papers. Definitely you can do. So for the other questions, if let's say you need to practice, then practice those questions. You can do topical revision quite easily with those, like especially if your school gives you topical revision, you can use that. And or if you have like a paper and you want to practice on actual papers, then you can use either your school past year papers or other schools past year papers. For example, for prelims, you should definitely use like school prelim papers to revise rather than the A levels, because the style is a bit different, or like the difficulty might be bit different compared in terms of the school and the A level papers. Of course, this is my opinion. If you feel like you should do the A level papers first, then go ahead. I'm not gonna stop you or anything, but this is my opinion. And this is what I also did, so yeah. So yeah, that's for the papers. And of course, sometimes when you're doing the questions, you may face difficulties, and you must assess what the difficulties are. If you know that the difficulty is from maybe one, not being able to memorize, or two, a lack of understanding, then you must definitely go and revisit the topic before you continue doing more questions. Of course, if it's due to careless mistakes, because all of us do careless mistakes, that's for sure, then try to just, you don't have to go to the notes itself, but instead sit there and try to remember how to avoid the careless mistake in the future. Try to figure that out. So yeah, that's like, you based on what you're doing, you should constantly be getting feedback from what you're doing, and revising how you should answer your questions and how you should go about doing your practice. And yeah, it seems complicated, but don't worry, you'll get to it eventually. It just takes some time and some understanding of your own work practices and your own study practices. So apart from that, another thing that you would be doing would be maybe just reading your notes, or maybe going and asking your teachers and your friends about any doubt that you have. Well, if you do have any such doubt, then yeah, you should probably ask your teachers or your friends who you can actually trust to answer. Please don't just wander around not knowing the answer to the question. Or if you are really not in the mood to ask anyone, go and search online and figure it out. So it's good to make sure to not have too many doubts left in one topic before you move on to the next one. It's, and it helps to reinforce the fact that you should probably understand it before you try to memorize. Yeah, so I think that's about it for studying per se. And for general studying, this is the advice I can give. So for the paper itself, well, the first thing you need to do is to prepare the necessary materials. So for paper one, you definitely need your 2B pencils and erasers. And if you're using a wooden pencil, you probably might want a sharpener or something. Or if you just sharpen it beforehand, it should be okay. You can just bring 2 or 3 pencils, then you'll be fine. For paper two and Oh yeah, paper one, please do bring your calculator as well because you need your calculator for like fast punching of the calculator. So for paper two and three, you definitely need your pencils, your calculator, and all that, and you also need the long ruler and your curved ruler because you need to draw graphs sometimes, or you might need to draw a graph. I don't know. So in case you need to do that, you probably should bring it, and also bring any you know yeah just bring all your stationery, basically your pencil, your pen, your eraser, your ruler, like the smaller rulers, because I think the long one might be a bit too long for everything. So yeah, I don't think you need to bring a GC because you don't really need your GC. Yeah, your scientific calculator is enough, but if you really do want to bring your GC, then go ahead. For me, I didn't do that because my GC was a mess. So yeah, I think you probably heard this enough times if you watch my videos. So yeah. Anyways, that's for the stuff that you need to bring in terms of stationery. So apart from stationery, do bring your water bottle, and if you're going to do exams in the aircon venue, then bring a jacket because sometimes you cannot do stuff when you're cold. So it's good to be have precaution against that. And apart from that, you need your entry proof, which is that the piece of paper that some people put nicely in a little plastic cover, and some people literally just fold it and put it in their pocket. And you need your NRIC and all that stuff, so please do remember all the things that you need to bring. And I think the school will also prepare you to bring all of those things one by one so that you can be familiarized with what you need to bring. Okay, so that's for stuff that you need to bring. Of course, another thing that you need to do is to get enough sleep before your exams. Even if you're like if you feel super unprepared, it is better to just sleep and wake up the next day, and maybe just if you really need to look at something, do it before the exam rather than do it overnight, because you're not really going to retain a lot of information if you study overnight, and you probably may not have enough focus the next day, especially for an important exam like A levels. You should probably try not to risk it. But if you're the kind who really can function with no hours of sleep, then I don't know what to say. But I would advise, please do get enough sleep before the exam. At least 7 to 8 hours should do the trick. So after all of the preparations that you have done, the final step is to do the exam. So for paper one, the exam is basically all multiple choice questions, and you have an OAS to shade your answers in. So as with any multiple choice question paper, if you want to be extra careful with your checking and everything, then I would advise writing your answer both in the question paper and also shading the same answer in your OAS. So if you write it in the question paper, at least you can have something to check back when you're checking your OAS against your answers. So by writing, you don't really need to write it per se. You can just take the answer or circle it or do whatever you want. Or if you're really like me and need to write it down, and just write it down. Because the important thing is you're more likely to write the answer that you intended to write in the question paper than if you were to not write it at all in the question paper and to directly shade it in the OAS. You might make a mistake somewhere, and then you may not have a way to check it apart from like literally staring at every question and trying to remember what answer you wrote, which is just extra brain work that you probably shouldn't be doing. Yeah, so just make your life easier by writing the answers in the question paper as well. And in A levels, you get to take the question paper back home, so maybe if you write answers there, you can at least discuss it with your friends. Yeah, okay. Never mind. Okay, so that's paper one. And some of the things that I can tell, first of all, it is multiple choice questions. So the thing about MCQ is that it makes you think it is very easy to do, but at the same time, it is also very tricky. Yeah, so that's the charm of multiple choice questions. And sometimes, if you're looking at the calculation questions, especially, you would have both the right answer and in the intermediate working answer in the options. So please be careful with your calculations. Please go all the way to the end of the calculation and don't stop halfway through and then be like, okay, this is the answer. Be very careful with what you're doing. Know the entire process. So like for example, if they're asking you to find the volume of gas, don't find the moles and then write that, like choose that answer in the question. Of course, that sounds like a very weird, bit unprecedented kind of a situation, but you know what I mean. Please choose the right answer. And sometimes maybe you need to multiply the answer by 2 and to get the final answer, and the one that is not multiplied is also on the options, and you accidentally choose that because you thought that was the answer and you didn't check it properly and didn't look through it properly. So the reason why I'm saying this is because when you do multiple choice questions, you're very likely to not write down anything apart from the final answer. So you'll probably be doing all of the workings in your head so that you can do it much quicker and not have to waste a lot of time writing down things. For that, I'm not going to discourage you from doing that, because I probably might do that sometimes too, especially if the thing is very easy. But I think at the very least, just make sure that you know what you're doing. Like, don't if you do find that you keep making careless mistakes doing that method, then try to write down at least some of the things. Maybe write down the numbers along the way so that you know that this is the process that you're taking to get to the answer. Yes, and sometimes when you type the calculator, you may type the wrong numbers. So please be very careful with that as well. Especially since that there's that 1 hour time limit, and your mind will just be like, might be a bit stressed out. But please don't get stressed out. Stay calm, because 1 hour is actually a lot of time. You can definitely do the questions in 1 hour. Don't worry. So just be calm and try not to make a mistake on your calculator. Okay, so that's for the calculation questions. Then for the other kinds of questions, there'll be memorization, like purely just, you remember something from your organic chem, that kind of question. For those, just make sure you actually remember the answer, like, remember what goes with what. And if you use some common sense as well, maybe you should be fine, hopefully. If it's a question that is a bit of both, like you memorize, but at the same time you have to apply that to the question. This is why understanding is important. Use your understanding to answer the question. Then be very careful, read the question carefully, read the entire question. Don't just read half of the question and be like, okay, this is the answer. Read the entire question, think about it carefully, and then choose your answer. As I said, you definitely have enough time to do this. 2 minutes for each question is definitely enough time to think. Do not worry. So, yeah, finally, the last point would be for questions which you do not know the answer to, or maybe questions that you're unsure of. If you're unsure of, but you kind of have an answer, then just write that answer down and maybe mark the question in your own way, like you can circle the number or something. And if it's a question that you definitely cannot think of an answer in like as soon as you look at it, or you cannot think of a way to get the answer, then I would suggest you just mark it. Like, if you want to mark it with a circle again, you can do that, or you can use a different mark. And then go to the next question first, and then return back to this question. Because sometimes if you spend like way too much time looking at the question, maybe you spend 2-3 minutes just for that one question, you may be wasting precious time that you may otherwise use in solving all the other questions. And in retrospect, it's better to just lose that one question than to lose two or three other questions from a lack of time. So use that logic and just move on first, and then come back to the question at the end when you have much more time to stare at it and think about it. Yeah, so just keep doing that. And like after you have done, if you have a few questions that you are unsure of, then look at it in the same way. If you look at the question and this time again you really cannot think of an answer, then move on to the next one. And you keep going, like like a elimination kind of thing, until you really have only one question left that you really need to that you really haven't got the answer yet. So just follow that method and you can definitely maximize your time in the MCQ paper. Okay, so that's for the MCQ paper. For paper 2, we have database questions and also structured questions. So in paper 2, the database questions would be, for example, kinematics. They give you the numbers and they ask you to maybe plot it out or do some graphing, then figure out whether it's a first order, second order, whatever, that kind of thing. Yeah, so in this case, you shouldn't forget your practical at this point. You should kind of remember at least those things, how to draw a graph and all that, because you might need to draw a graph. There is a chance that you might need to draw a graph. And please follow those rules carefully. So if you want more information on how to draw a graph, then you can watch the practical series for that, I think. But yeah, the rule of thumb is you just make sure you plot the points correctly with nearest half of that square, like the smallest square in the sense. You'll probably get graph paper if you need to draw a graph. And if for the kinetics kind of stuff, then you just draw a gradient and then figure out what's the gradient and also what's the half-life and stuff like that. So just do what you need to do. Like don't hesitate. Like don't overthink it. If you know that's what you need to do, then go ahead and do it. And please use pencil, because I don't think you wanna redraw the entire thing. You can use an eraser and nicely erase it and draw it that whatever spot that you want to draw it again. Okay, so if it's a different kind of database question which doesn't require a graph, then I guess you could probably rejoice, because sometimes the graph drawing may end up wasting a lot of your time. So yeah, if you don't get a graph, then at least you don't have to waste time drawing and making sure your graph looks nice and doesn't look like a mess. Yeah, there is that problem. Sometimes you don't draw it like a best fit line to the points, and that could be a problem. But for the most part, don't overdo it. Don't do it so many times until you drive yourself crazy or something. Do it like, if you really need to do it another time, maybe just do it maximum 2 times. Don't go more than that. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, so if it doesn't require a graph, then use your application skills once again. So be very careful with what you're doing. Make sure you know what topic this related to. I think it'll be pretty obvious based on the data and the experiment that's been done. So if you remember your practical experiments, like you don't need to remember how to do the experiment in great detail, but you need to know what the experiment is about. So at least if you see the same details, you know, oh, this is what's going on and this is what I need to do with the data. Yeah, so just make sure you know what you're doing. For that, if you have trouble with database questions and it's not because of graphing, then I suggest you go and revise the same topics that you would if you're looking at practical in general. Or in terms of the content, if you see something that is an experiment related kind of thing, then look at that in greater detail and understand it better so that you don't make mistakes in database questions. Yeah, so basically revise more of the application stuff in your chemistry syllabus. I hope you can understand what I mean. Like the kinetics, or maybe if you're organic chem, you see, you look at what are the determining test, the test tube test you can do for your organic chem. Like look at those things instead so that you know what is going on. Okay, but actually that one is more for elucidation, so I'll talk about elucidation soon. So that's for paper 2. Like the other structured questions would be either explanation questions, which I think is really just a matter of understanding plus some memorization of certain words or the order of things, and other calculation based questions, which once again make sure you know what you're doing. If you understand the question, then you can calculate it properly and get the right answer. And maybe some, okay, I think the organic chem questions tend to be in paper 3. So paper 3 will have like a bunch of free response questions, and this is where a lot of the organic chem reaction mechanisms tend to be tested, and also the elucidation tends to be tested here. So yeah, that is paper 3. For the other questions, they're like really long questions, so they're even longer than the paper 2 questions in general. So do keep your stamina up as you do the questions. Don't right? Make sure you, like, because all of the questions are kind of connected, so the sub parts are all connected in a way, so you need to know what the whole process of how you get from the beginning to the end of the question. And yeah, there is ECF carried in some of the cases, but if you get everything, if it's a question that's like, oh, do you agree, yes or no, and then plus explanation, if you say the yes and no wrongly, then your explanation isn't gonna work either. So yeah, just you, like, please know where your ECF works and where it doesn't. And for your SFDP, you can just follow 3SF. Unless it's a database question in which you follow the same rules that you follow for practical. Follow the stuff in the table instead of just writing 3SF for everything. So yeah, just understand that. Um, right. So the final thing would be the two questions that you have to choose at the end, one or the other. Okay, so both of these questions will probably be about organic chem. that's like that's the case 90% of the time. So yeah, please make sure you know what you're doing. And when you look at the question, sometimes you may not really know which one to choose because they have like the same kind of structure. They have like a similar number of marks for somewhat recall kind of questions, and similar number of marks for stuff like elucidation and things like that. So the first thing you can look at is see how many marks you can confirm get from maybe recall or explanation that you can definitely 100% give with full 100% confidence you can do it. You first calculate how many marks you can get from each of those questions. If you have a clear winner there, then choose that question to go with. And the second thing you can do is, if you see elucidation and if you're the kind of person who likes elucidation, because one of them might have it and one of them may not really have much of elucidation. So if you like elucidation, then you can go for the elucidation one, or if you do not like elucidation because you always mess up in elucidation, then you can go for the other one. And you might be wondering who would actually like elucidation. It seems pretty annoying to do. The thing is, elucidation isn't just about finding the molecules, right? You get marks for giving correct deductions. So if you're able to do that well, you can still get quite a decent amount of marks from elucidation. So that's why I sometimes actually like doing elucidation, because I don't really have to write explanations. I can just, use some facts and just write some statements. And even if I don't get the final compounds or the final molecules, which might be worth about 5 marks at max. The rest of the marks will be from deductions and stuff. So if you can get all the deductions, it may not be the worst thing to be doing actually. And if you do get the other question, like the other subparts correct, then it's actually a good choice. Maybe you might not have really fared very well for the explanation question. So really depends on you individually, and what you can do well. Do think about that before you choose the question. Don't anyhow just do the first one because that's the one that comes first or something. Like, think about it, which one you can do better. And if and I of course, if you don't have a lot of time and you're really running out of time, maybe just quickly glance through and if maybe you can use like much more quicker tips, quicker heuristics, like, oh, how many marks are like 1 mark questions, how many marks are more than 1 mark kind of questions. You can use even quicker ways to figure it out. Really, like, if the thing that I told just now is, if you have enough time to actually look at the questions and do it, which I don't think really takes a lot of time, maybe 1 or 2 minutes max, to look through the questions and see which one you can do better. You shouldn't be reading the question in great depth at that point. You should only do that after you choose the question. But when you look at the question, which one you can get more marks in, that kind of thing. That's what I meant to say. So yeah, that is for paper 3. Yeah, so for elucidation and stuff, I might make a separate video on that, because that probably requires its own explanation and stuff like that on how to tackle elucidation. But really, the thing is, elucidation isn't as hard as you think it is. You can still get a decent number of marks from elucidation. So yeah, that's about it. I think after the paper, when you get back all of your exam papers and everything, the first now some things that you should definitely do. One is to see where you make your mistakes, and then figure out what kind of mistakes they are. Are they careless mistakes? Are they memorization slash understanding mistakes, or what kind of mistakes they are? And then two, the next thing would be how to move forward, how to do the next paper better, how to do this particular topic better. Sometimes it's not even just about carelessness or memorization, it could also be your strategy. Do you have enough time to finish the paper? If you didn't have time to finish the paper, how will you avoid that in the future? So like think about all those things, not just about the mistakes but also about your strategy, whether you had enough time during the actual exam. Sometimes you can actually spend some time to think about it if it's not your A levels. You can just spend a few minutes thinking about how your exam experience was for that day. Like, where did you find it very difficult? Did you find it very easy? Or did you find the time lacking or really plentiful? And did you were you able to check your answers, or did you feel like checking your answers to begin with? So do think about that as well. Don't just go home and then forget about it immediately. Of course, you shouldn't spend too much time on that either, but still, do think about it if you can, or if you see that there is something significant that you had to take note of. Most of the time you may not really have anything significant to take note of. Yeah, so that's the final thing that I had to say. And I hope you find this video useful, even though it is quite long. I hope it helps you when you study for your chemistry exams. And if you want any particular smaller videos which might be related to chemistry itself, maybe videos like for elucidation specifically or something like that, then you can comment it below. Or if I come up with any particular ideas, then I'll probably just do it on my own. So yeah, if you found this video useful, please press the like button and subscribe. And with that, I would like to say thank you and bye. Well, thanks for staying with me through this chemistry series. Yay! Look forward for more more content. And this isn't the end of my content or anything. There's still a lot of stuff to come along. Okay, bye.